Years ago, my students and I developed a practice we call quote checking. It's really very simple and will help with these things. Before I explain what quote checking is, I want to be clear about what it is not. It is not prior review, and if you're not familiar with that term, check out this video. It is also not asking permission from the source to use their quote. In almost all situations, sources are giving their permission to use their quotes when they agree to an interview. So what is a quote check? It's checking with the source about a quote you plan to use, making sure that you are factually accurate and that the wording they used is what they intended. As you can guess, this both helps your story be accurate and builds trust with sources. If they know they don't need to be perfect in their wording, that they'll have a chance to review the quotes you plan to use, they'll be more comfortable and more willing to do interviews in the future. Now, I know some people hear this and think, but that leaves room for sources to change what they said. Would you let them deny that they said something when you have it on the record? And I respect that instinct. I believe in holding the powerful accountable. But the truth is that the kind of denials or retractions you're imagining rarely happen in student journalism. Here's a rough estimate of the kinds of responses I've seen at the 2 schools where I've been an advisor. About 80% of people respond by saying something like, "Sounds good, thanks." Roughly 20% of people respond and say, "Thanks, I said X, but can you change it to Y?" And those things are where we get accuracy improvements. It's also where people get a chance to choose their words more carefully. Now, could someone abuse this? In theory, but in my experience, it almost never happens. In fact, it's happened exactly twice in my years of advising. In both cases, the editor and writer talked about how to discuss the request with the source, and something was worked out to mutual satisfaction. So here's the process we use. Near the start of the interview, the writer tells the source that they will send an email quote check with the quotes they plan to use when the first draft is done. Then once that draft is written, the writer crafts an email in this structure. "Thanks for the interview. Here are the quotes I plan to use." Then for each one, show these 3 things: context, the quote, and the check. And the check is almost always, "Does this sound right?" Those 4 words. The wording is not asking permission to use the quote. It's checking the accuracy and comfort of the source with the wording and the context. I can almost hear some people cringing at the idea of making sure sources are comfortable with their wording in their interviews. For the 20% of sources who have a concern about the use of their quote, get an editor or advisor involved and talk through the issues. Then have a dialogue with the source. For more details, see the description below.